In Iraq and in Afghanistan, the body count continues to rise. Many of the victims of the so-called war on terror are innocent civilians, caught up in the crossfire and classified as collateral damage. Their deaths are unlikely to ever be investigated. And in some cases, even their identities will remain unknown. Yet a select few who have died on the battlefield have gained special attention. Those of coalition servicemen killed by their own side. They are the victims of so-called friendly fire.
I don't think there is any rationale you can bring to it. It's one of those horrible freak incidents that should never have happened.
If David had have been killed in combat, he would have been a hero. He would have died doing his job.
You know, they didn't just kill 3 boys. They killed other families. You know, this is never ever going to leave us.
London, March 2003. Despite massive opposition by the British public, Prime Minister Tony Blair joins with US President George Bush in his plan to invade Iraq. Operation Iraqi Freedom and its aftermath were to wreak devastation on Iraq and its people. Yet, for some young men, the theatre of war was the realization of long-held dreams.
Little boys at nursery and at school, they say what they want to be when they grow up. I'm going to be a fireman, I'm going to be a policeman, not David. David, I'm going to be a soldier. It was just something David always wanted to do.
To Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
David Clarke was just 16 when he achieved his ambition and joined the Queen's Royal Lancers, the top armoured cavalry regiment in the British Army.
The photograph that you can see behind me of David in his uniform, he actually presented that to his nan for her 60th birthday.
David's mother, Beverly, was proud that her son had chosen to serve his country and supported him when he volunteered to fight in the southern Iraqi city of Basra. According to her, David never questioned the motives behind the invasion.
In David's mind, we were at risk. He was protecting his country and serving his country. And he'd do that 100%. That was his job. He swore his allegiance. He went under the assumption that there was all these weapons of mass destruction. And now that's come out that they were never there anyway.
Yet this deception was soon to be compounded by one far more cruel. Just days after her son had been dispatched to Iraq, David's mother received the news that all parents dread.
As soon as I got through David's father's door, I knew something was wrong. Major Denise Simpson, who was the officer that actually informed us of David's death. I stood, I listened. She said that David had actually been shot in crossfire in Iraq and had been killed. At that, I ran. Left the house, just ran.
The official from the British Ministry of Defence had not told Beverly of the real cause of her son David's death, so-called friendly fire.
At 5:30 this morning,
the truth had, however, been leaked to the British media.
At Birmingham International Airport, carrying the latest war casualties to be flown into the West Midlands.
My sister was here, and I couldn't understand why she didn't want me to put the television on so I could see the news. Every time I tried, oh no, you don't want to watch that, Bev. And then I thought, I haven't got enough, people are going to be coming round, I haven't got enough cups. I need to go to the shop, buy some mugs. And I walked round to our local shop and there was the billboard.
It soon emerged that the Challenger 2 tank, which David Clarke and his colleague Stephen Albert were in, had come under fire. and had been hit by a shell from another British tank. Both young men were killed.
I mean, all the evidence is there to say this should not have happened. But I do know in wars, humans make mistakes. We all have overdosed. I mean, there are times in the day when we make silly judgments and we say afterwards, how did we do that? Why did it happen? I can only assume because the person concerned was so hyped up, was so gung-ho, that the normal checks and balances didn't apply. It was one of those dreadful mistakes that happens under stress.
But that's cold comfort to a family who's lost a loved one. And that's where the difficulty lies, is they have to explain this unexplainable situation that the military take as normal.
David's mother, Beverly, understands that mistakes occur in war, but she cannot accept the way she has been treated by the British military authorities.
When David first got killed, the army said, we'll be there for you. As time has gone on, their support has dwindled. With the inquest, they promised, because I couldn't go myself, they promised to keep me informed. I never got one phone call off the MOD about what was happening in that inquest. You have to fight all the way to get answers. They're not given willingly.
Sapna Malik has taken on that fight as a solicitor, representing the families of victims of friendly fire in their quest for justice.
A lot of the time they felt very let down by the way they've been treated following either injuries to themselves or deaths of their loved ones. What they mainly want is an apology from the MOD and an explanation, a full explanation of what happened to them or to their loved ones, and to find out whether there is fault and explanation for what happened further up the chain of command.
The families of David Clarke and Stephen Albert had to wait 4 years for an inquiry to be held into their deaths. The coroner labelled them a completely avoidable tragedy. But it's not known what steps the British Ministry of Defence will take to prevent such incidents recurring. But for civilian victims of so-called friendly fire, who far outnumber military casualties, there is little chance of an investigation, let alone justice.
It's just one of the tragedies, huge tragedies of war, the number of civilians that do get killed and get classed under collateral damage, and whose cases or whose circumstances are very rarely ever going to come to light and be examined in any way.
John Sloboda leads a team of researchers at the Iraq Body Count Organization in London. He attempts to document the precise number of Iraqi civilians who have been killed at the hands of coalition forces in the ongoing conflict. Neither the American nor the British governments publish figures on these civilian deaths. And so, Mr. Sloboda is compelled to make estimations based on media reports.
Where possible, we extract from these media reports information about the perpetrator. In not all cases is that information available, but the information we have is that about 11,500 of those deaths can be definitely attributed to coalition fire. That's about 14% of all deaths, civilian deaths in Iraq.
Such shocking casualty figures, the result of what was supposed to have been a straightforward campaign to oust Saddam Hussein, have galvanized opposition against the war across the world as well as in Britain. There, friendly fire incidents, particularly those involving American forces firing on British troops, have been especially controversial. Alex McEwen was at the center of one of the most high-profile cases. He is now retired from the British Army and agreed to speak exclusively to Al Jazeera. Mr. McEwen was the commanding officer of Lance Corporal Matty Hull, who was killed in March 2003 after American pilots opened fire on British soldiers in southern Iraq. The pair were traveling together at the head of a 4-vehicle convoy as they approached a potentially hostile Iraqi village.
We'd been tasked to prove a route, which is to say, check a route is clear of enemy. And we had just started that task when we came across a village which had suspected Iraqi soldiers in it.
The details of exactly how friendly fire incidents occur are seldom clear.
Tell you what, come on, I'm going up west. You roll in.
But remarkably, what happened next to Alex McEwen and Matty Hull was captured on camera.
We got a vehicle.
The contents of this video from the cockpit of an American A-10 aircraft were to anger the British public and become key evidence in an unprecedented legal case.